The situation in the Middle East is changing rapidly. The United States of America and Iran have agreed to extend the ceasefire. This was reported by the Al Arabiya TV channel, citing sources, and clarified that there is no official information yet about the duration of the new agreement or its terms. On this same day, August 17, the 60-day period of the previous agreement expired, which was not observed by either side. But right after that, Trump unexpectedly threatened in an interview with Fox News, no, not Iran, but Oman. Quote, "If Oman gets in the way, we'll bomb them to hell." And against this backdrop, there was news that the Persian Gulf countries are still exporting oil from the region through the Strait of Hormuz, but semi-legally, specifically through Omani waters. And Oman is trying to conduct its own separate negotiations with Iran, which really angers Donald Trump, and now Trump is threatening to strike Oman. In this episode, we'll break down what's behind both statements and talk about the extension of the truce and the threats to Oman. My name is Pechiy, let's dive into this topic together, but before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. We're moving toward a milestone of 300,000 subscribers, so I would appreciate every one of your subscriptions. So let's start with probably the hottest news, which is the extension of the truce between the US and Iran. Let me remind you, back in mid-June, the US and Iran signed a Memorandum of Understanding, agreeing to hold negotiations within 2 months to establish a long-term peace. The essence was that on June 17, the parties agreed that within 2 months they would open the Hormuz Strait, resolve all issues regarding sanctions, and eventually even reach some kind of decision on Iran's nuclear program. But it didn't work out. So let me remind you, the main topics were Iran's nuclear program, the conditions for navigation through the Hormuz Strait, and Tehran's demands to unfreeze its assets in the West. But on Monday, the day this 60-day deadline expired, the representative of Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Esmail Baghai, stated, "Negotiations on the nuclear deal never even started. And the 60-day deadline itself, basically, it's no longer relevant." So the formal extension of the truce, which Al Arabiya reports, is happening while the Iranian side publicly denies the very existence of anything to extend. And overall, I personally no longer understand what practical sense this continuation or proposal for a truce even has, if no truce works anyway. But they signed a truce on June 17. So what? In reality, it didn't exist. And that piece of paper lasted, well, literally a day, maybe. And after a day, the fighting resumed again. Although against this background, Trump suddenly confirmed the information that we talked about yesterday on this YouTube channel. The US is still holding direct negotiations with the leaders of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Next is a quote from Trump. "We have an unofficial channel of communication with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. We are in direct contact with IRGC representatives in Iran. However, the IRGC itself denies Trump's claims." And in the organization's statement today, it says that Trump's claims about direct negotiations are, quote, "fantasies born of delusions and nightmares about defeat in the war." Well, okay, even if negotiations are taking place, it's unclear where they will actually lead. Meanwhile, Trump, who failed in the war with Iran, has started threatening neighboring Oman. And here, context is important, without which Trump's statement just looks like a burst of irritation that supposedly doesn't mean anything. This is about the negotiations between Iran and Oman and the rules for passage through the Strait of Hormuz. According to Reuters, just a few days before Trump's statement, Iran and Oman reached an agreement on the navigation map through the strait. And this agreement actually gives Tehran control over ships entering the Persian Gulf, and on the way out, they have to pass through Omani waters. Well, and this started to really annoy Trump, because literally on August 12, the American president himself publicly stated that the strait is completely controlled by the United States of America. And here we have a direct clash of two versions of reality. Oman and Iran are talking about their own shipping map and making agreements on how the Strait of Hormuz will operate in the future. And Trump is talking about full American control, and that after the war he promised to declare it American territory. It was against this backdrop that the chief international correspondent of Fox News asked Trump about the Iran-Oman negotiations and received the following answer, quote, "If the authorities of Oman get in our way, we will bomb them to hell." The president, of course, did not specify the circumstances under which Washington would be ready to carry out such a strike. In the same conversation, he stated that Iran should raise the white flag of surrender, but emphasized that he was not setting any deadlines and was not in a hurry. After all, Trump has learned something. Look, there are no more deadlines or ultimatums, he says. Well, someday they will, I hope, raise the white flag of surrender. And it's telling that this is not the first such threat. Let me remind you, back in May, Trump already said he was ready to destroy Oman if they stop coordinating actions with the US over the Hormuz Strait. So the threat is not spontaneous, but rather a recurring pattern of behavior. But Oman has already stepped away once. Oman didn't get a response from the US and is distancing itself again, which indicates that Trump's threats don't really scare him that much. But on the other hand, I'll say it again, this also puts a lot of pressure on the US allies in the Persian Gulf, because Trump himself isn't exactly conducting honest negotiations. In that same interview, Donald Trump made a statement that directly relates to our previous episode about the behind-the-scenes part of the negotiations. And Trump confirmed the existence of an unofficial communication channel with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. According to Trump, the Iranian side is bluffing about being in a strong position, while actually being in a critical situation. However, the IRGC itself directly denied these words. So, on the same issue, whether there is a real communication channel between Washington and the IRGC command, which actually makes all the decisions in Tehran, there are two mutually exclusive public statements from the participants themselves. Moreover, the Iranian side formulates its denial in such pointedly insulting terms toward the American president. And instead of responding to Iran, Trump has now switched to making threats. But if you look at the whole situation realistically, it becomes clear that both sides, Iran and the US, are dragging out this dispute and are not moving toward a quick resolution. And here's why. According to the Wall Street Journal, citing intelligence agencies from several Arab countries, Iran is actually betting not on compromise, but on military escalation in its confrontation with the US and Israel. It is expanding counterintelligence operations, accelerating the production of missiles and drones, and threatening Arab countries where US military bases are located. And it does not rule out sabotage, such as blowing up internet cables in the Persian Gulf and destabilizing the situation in countries with Shia communities like Kuwait and Bahrain. It's like when the Russians invaded Ukraine under the pretext of protecting Russian speakers. The Iranians are saying the same thing. There are Shia there too, let's go protect them. At the same time, Tehran fully understands that Trump himself is also suffering economic losses. High fuel prices due to the Middle Eastern conflict are hurting voter support in the US. So in short, the Islamic Republic is trying to provoke economic tension in America. And America, in turn, is trying to provoke economic tension in the Islamic Republic. But such a war, as you can imagine, can last for years. In summary, the formal extension of the truce, which Al Arabiya is writing about today, is happening against the backdrop of Iran itself publicly denying the existence of any basis for negotiations. And Trump is threatening to bomb yet another country, the third one, which was actually an ally, not an adversary, simply because it is conducting its own negotiations with Tehran regarding shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps directly calls the American president's claims about the existence of a backchannel of communication a fantasy. But with such deep mutual contradictions, the very phrasing of extending the truce looks more like a temporary postponement of publicly admitting failure rather than a real step toward lasting peace. And both sides are deliberately prolonging this uncertainty, hoping to wear down the opponent's economy before their own. In general, we have entered a war of attrition, which, let's be clear, will now last for months, if not years. That's it, this is already a well understood issue. That if a war isn't won and doesn't end with any agreement in the first 6 months, then that's it. It enters a phase of attrition and can really last for years. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye everyone.